Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this session. Right. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Deasy Wang from UKTI Jakarta, and I got my colleague here, Yiong from UKTI Singapore. Both of us will be talking about doing business in our own country, and particularly on the education sector. Okay. Have you been to Indonesia? Are you familiar with Indonesia? No. Okay. Let me show you. This is Indonesia. Okay. The capital city of Indonesia is Jakarta, okay? It's about 500 miles from Singapore, like 2 hours flight, but from the UK it's 17 hours flight, okay? We got 17,000 islands across the country, but 6,000 are still inhabited, right? Okay, Indonesia is the biggest economy in Southeast Asia and one of the fastest growing emerging markets. We got very large population, about over 240 million. However, 60% are still living under poverty, and we also got a growing middle class and also abundance of natural resources. But in terms of ease of doing business in Indonesia, Indonesia ranked 128 in the world. It's a very complex business environment, but it's very challenging. Okay, right. See, 60% of the total population live in Java Island, where the capital city is, and 60% of the population is below age 30. Growing of middle class about 45 million, and 32 million are still living under poverty, earning about 22 US dollars per month. And in terms of social media, Indonesia is now worth 4th largest market for Facebook and 5th largest for Twitter. Unemployment rate is about 6.1%, youth employment about 22%. Right. Here are some of the challenges. Well, like I said, Indonesia is a big market, right? But it's very challenging. And like in any other developing countries, rules and regulations are not as transparent in developed countries. And therefore, this is one of the barriers for foreigners to do business in Asia. And also in terms of infrastructure, because we got these infrastructure issues, and some areas cannot be reached by land. So you need air transport, which is would cost a lot, for the companies. And that's why this is also add to your logistic costs. And again, culture, West versus East, and like in any, Eastern countries, like you need to understand the culture, the do and don'ts, and do not address people by their name. Okay, we always address people by Mr. or Mrs. Like Bapa is for a man, Ibu is for a woman. Yeah. Okay, and however, this is our recipe for success. Always do your research, be price sensitive, be prepared to adapt to and follow local ethics, and relationship. Business in Indonesia are very rely on close relationship, and that's why you need to have a close relationship with your partner and your clients. And also in terms of communications, English is not widely spoken in Indonesia, unlike in Singapore or Malaysia. People in Indonesia, we speak Bahasa Indonesia, that's the national language. And that's why it is important for you to bring a translator or middleman when you meet your client or potential business partner. And then be patient. Do not expect fast reply. A lot of UK companies come to me like, how come they never reply my email in a week? I said, that's normal, because they need to have an internal meeting with their boss, before they are able to answer you. And also some of the executives do not speak English. That's why they don't really understand what you mean. They need to discuss with their colleague. Yeah, and then plan your appointment carefully. Always expect for last-minute changes. Things can happen anytime. And then always do a constant follow-up before you come to Indonesia. Right. Okay, education. Education in Indonesia is under the responsibility of Ministry of Education and Culture, but however, for Islamic school, it's under Ministry of Religious Affairs. And then the public school education is based on Dutch model, and we provide 12 years education. And here we got 144,000 elementary schools, 28,000 junior high schools, 10,000 senior high schools. And for international schools, we got 140 international schools across the country, and we got 50 national plus schools in Indonesia. National plus school is somewhere in between government school and international school. They are in the middle, but they use English and also international curriculum. Okay, we got 82 state universities, 28,000 private universities, and 155 lecturers. And private universities are often funded by the country's tycoon. Right. Right. Here are the current opportunities for education in Asia. Right. Indonesian government come with a master plan to make Indonesia to become a developed nation by 2025. But again, we are shortage of high-skilled labor. And that's why now the government is focused on the vocational education and also on the training course. And by 2015, ASEAN will become one entity, it's like EU. And there will be lots of foreign investors coming to the country. But again, we are shortage of this high-skilled professional executive, and that's why lots of companies are looking at more on corporate training. Yeah, and this is, I think, a big opportunity for UK corporate training companies to partnership with the local one. Yeah, and then, okay. Like I said, English is not widely spoken in Asia. And then people, also say, when you're talking about local companies, they all speak Bahasa Indonesia. Only people who work for international companies, they speak English. But again, the level of English okay. For example, some executive in the higher level position, they don't speak English at all. It is surprising. And that's why they need to go to undertake like additional tuition course after work. And I think this is a big opportunity also for UK training providers, you know, to work with Indonesia training providers to open up a English training center in Indonesia. And then teachers development. Indonesia is also a shortage of high quality teachers. You know, most of teachers, they don't have a high education, and also they don't speak English very well. That's why the Ministry of Education, they come out with a scholarship. So for next year, they will fund about 150 Indonesian scholarships to overseas, and then they will pay for the 3 years, the first 3 years course, and then the 4th year will be funded by the UK government. All right, joint program as usual, partnership with local universities, and I think this is also create opportunities for UK institutions to work with Indonesia education provider to improve the education performance. And yeah, all right, okay, great, okay. Here's some of the market entry procedures. Foreign institutions are not allowed to open a campus in Indonesia. That's why you need a local partner. It is under the negative list, okay? But again, in April, there will be a presidential election, and we don't know, maybe there will be a changes of negative list, but we are waiting for that. And same thing for the education products. It is advisable to have a local partner or local distributor, because the rules and regulations sometimes are very complex, yeah? So it's better for you to have a local partner who understands the market better and have a networking, okay? Well, I think this is my presentation for today. And if you have any further questions, here are my details. You can always see me after this session, okay? Right, now I pass to my colleague Malcolm Yiong from Singapore. Good afternoon and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Malcolm. I'm from UKTI Singapore. So just for today, I'll just give you a quick background of the Singapore's economic structure, some of the economic trends that we have seen before highlighting some of the important developments that we have seen in the Singapore's education landscape. So just a bit of quick facts about UK and Singapore. Singapore's UK's largest trading partner in Southeast Asia. Half of UK investment into ASEAN is really Singapore bound. And there are more than 700 over companies, registered companies of British origin into Singapore with more than 32,000 British residents. And the British Chamber of Commerce is a very active partner of UKTI in Singapore as well, together with the British Council. Why Singapore? You will realize that in recent years, there are many multinational companies that have used Singapore as their regional headquarters or even global headquarters. This is certainly a trend that the Singapore government, especially the Economic Development Board, they have taken note. And this is something that I will talk more later about what it impacts on the corporate training landscape and the leadership management training as well. Just some points that you can see from here as well. English is the language of business and education. The UK-Singapore Economic Business Partnership. This is something I want to highlight because between the Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry and the UK government, we have recognized that 3 sectors are of particular interest. This is the aviation and aerospace sector, the education sector, and the smart cities sector. Smart cities, essentially, we talk about the use of information technology to leverage and to basically enhance the living standards and to use Singapore as a base for as an example of global living standards as well. Yeah. Just a bit of killer facts about the economic structure of Singapore. You can see for latest figures, Singapore's economy grew by 3.7% in 2013, and we are on track to grow for between 3% to 4%. Some of the key sectors that continue to contribute a lot to Singapore's economic performance continues to be manufacturing, wholesale, retail, the financial services as well, and the business services. You will realize that education actually undercuts, or rather is a fundamental component of many of these sectors. Just a bit of a background about the latest budget 2013, which is still in force until March 20, which is until this year's March. The latest budget 2014 will be released on the 21st of February. So for those who are interested, you can please do keep a lookout for that. Essentially, if you look at the last point, which is this one, education and healthcare sectors are set to benefit from an expenditure rise of 10.5% and 18.2%. So there is increasing scope to grow between these 2 sectors as well. Government procurement. This is the only portal, or rather the only way from which companies, whether both local or foreign entities, would like to find out more about how they can submit proposals or to win certain particular government project tenders as well. IP protection. Just a bit about IP protection. Singapore is well known, in fact, it's tops in Asia and one of the top countries in the world, known for our intellectual property regime, intellectual protection regime as well. And just like the latest study by the World Economic Forum, we are the 2nd most protective IP regime in the world. We are a signatory to a lot of major IP conventions and treaties. For the Singapore government, there's this agency, the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore. They are the ones that basically, they are the main kind of lead agency in charge of all IP related matters. Key opportunities for UK companies. I'm just giving you a brief run through of some of the major sectors, even though it's not directly education. Aerospace, aviation hub. You will see that because we had the royal visit in September 2012. So the Duchess of Cambridge, she was there at Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce has set up an Asia-Pacific office in Singapore. Biomedical healthcare continues to be one of the key growth engines of Singapore. Creative industries and ICT, as I mentioned earlier, we are talking about smart cities as well. Increasingly, culture, arts, design, and media continue to be the prime growth engines as well. Energy, financial and professional services, especially when we talk about in asset and private wealth management. Private wealth management continues to be one of the lead subsectors within the financial services as well. Infrastructure development, we talk about railway projects, as well as some of the public housing and civil engineering projects. Now, a bit more on education and training. Contributes about 3% of the current GDP, forecasted to reach by another 5%. Emphasis on knowledge-intensive work When you talk about knowledge intensive, because we are really talking about how we can use, or rather leverage on the presence of so many regional companies which have make Singapore their home, to grow this talent pool within the Singaporean community as well, but also to see how we can continue to enrich both the locals and the foreign expatriate communities in terms of their leadership skill sets. There is a current review of Polytechnic and ITE education, which just commenced this month, because we are looking to, the Singapore government is looking to see how they can future-proof youth against unemployment via a more integrated way of attachments and apprenticeships as well. Demand for management education to equip future global leaders with the skills to drive business strategies in Asia. This is again linked to why they increasingly want to leverage on all these companies who have made Singapore their home to continue to do that. Review again of the continuing education and training, which in other ways, I think some of the terminology that you use here in the UK, I think you use it as a lifelong learning. There's something akin to that as well. So basically focusing on CPD, continuous professional development of people like just like you and I, you know, adult learners, which essentially we want to be able to see go beyond a degree education. Strengthening support for effective delivery of citizenship and character education. That's another key point as well. This is something that has one of the priorities of the Ministry of Education. We talk about focusing on niche programs with each secondary school receiving 50 or equivalent to £50,000 per year, and that's quite a lot of money actually. And revamp again of the early childhood education and physical education curriculum. There is currently a demand for preschool teachers, and in fact, we are also looking to the UK to see how the UK's early childhood education scene, this is something that we could learn from as well. And at the same time, if you look at more relevant to this batch show as well about emerging technologies, some of the key interests that's buzzing around in Singapore right now, we are talking about collaborative environments, mobile apps, learning analytics, e-assessment, personalized learning, and so on. You will find that by talking to a lot of Singapore companies, sometimes what they are really looking for is content. They have the infrastructure, we have the technology as well, but sometimes what we are looking for is good and enriching sustainable content to be able to enrich Singapore's education landscape. So if you are really looking into business in Singapore, you are really asking, how can your products, how can your solutions enrich Singapore's ongoing developments in terms of this policy? So we are not really interested in what you can do for other countries, but what you can really tailor for Singapore, because Singapore really wants to maintain its cutting edge and its pole position as one of the educational hubs in the world. So 5 key takeaways before I end off. So we offer a low-risk, high-potential economic environment, ease of doing business. We're #1 for the past 8 years. Gateway into Asia, we export 25% of goods into ASEAN. Familiar environment, we are still a member of the Commonwealth. We have close cultural, business, and legal ties with Britain. Economic restructuring is still ongoing in Singapore as we move towards higher productivity, knowledge-driven economy, and so on. So just a bit of, when they had that royal visit, so we're delighted the relationship between the UK and Singapore is now as close as it has ever has been. And for further information, please feel free to speak with me after the session, or if you have any questions, please do raise them now or to Daisy as well. Thank you.